Hey, I'm Nuriy, a recent Bachelor of Science Business Management graduate from Lancaster University, and this is Lepas Sekolah.
Let's start at the beginning. What did you want to be when you were younger?
I actually never had an answer to this question because I was so engrossed in my arts and crafts like growing up, and also I just knew I loved making money. So just something between the intersection of something creative and money making, that was just something I knew that I was like geared towards. Yeah.
And you attended high school at SMK Seri Saujana. What kind of student were you?
Oh, I was definitely not the studious kind. I was not the kiasu kind. I was also not the sporty kind. So in every aspect, I was just not talented at all. In fact, I was pretty mediocre. But thankfully, I still kept my grades at like quite decent lah. But I still had my several C's and D's here and there.
And you took the art stream in SPM, right?
Yeah.
The norm is usually to go for the science stream, so how was your decision made?
To be honest, my school was one of those kebangsaan schools that defaulted to putting the students with the flying colors into science stream, and then the rest of them were in art stream. Like after you get your PT3 results, so I scored 7 A's for my PT3, and I was put into science stream. First day of class in Form 4, I just knew that biology, physics, none of that was for me. So immediately wrote a surat to your I don't know your HEP or your academic teacher and like asked them to switch me to accounting because I would much rather do balance sheets than being in the lab.
And do you think that SPM gave you the opportunity to explore your interests?
Definitely, because my school wasn't a cluster school at all. It was one of your neighborhood schools that your parents would just send you because it's convenient and it's near your house. And so we weren't known for producing really high achieving students or, having really sporty, like athletic students or anything. So that led me to discovering the Sidang Redaksi Club, which is the editorial club. And that's where I actually delve into graphic design and sort of reaffirm my interest to be somewhere or like to work somewhere in the creative industry. And so throughout Form 3, Form 4, and Form 5, I stayed back to school to attend meetings for, designing the school magazines and this and that. So that was also sort of my first taste of like project management and leading a team of, wannabe graphic designers in high school.
And how did you end up doing for SPM?
I achieved 6 A's, 2 B's, and 1 E. So that was made out of like 1 A plus for English, and then 5 A's, 2 B plus, and 1 E, which is at maths.
And after high school, where did you go for pre-university?
I went to College Professional Mara Beranang.
Was there a specific reason you chose that school?
I chose it because the diploma program was 2 years as compared to the usual UPU University Awam, which is 4 years. And I think after SPM, my end goal or like, what I had set in mind was that I just wanted to go overseas at some point in the future. And it was definitely for studies. So um, at the time, I heard of this sponsorship program called IASP. I'm not sure if it's still even around anymore, but it's called IPMA Excellent Students Program, and it basically allows those who graduated from Mara institutions to apply for the sponsorship program.
What was the environment like in KPM Beranang, like socially and academically speaking?
So socially, I would say it's very much like a boarding school. Although I've never been to a boarding school before, but it's very structured. As in, you don't get to choose your classes. You don't get to go out for gaps in between for coffee or anything like that. So your class starts at 8, and then it could be a full day that finishes until like 1 or 2 or 3 p.m. And then you only have like 1 hour lunch breaks. And academically, it was made up of 6 semesters in the span of 2 years. So each semester would be 10 to 14 weeks, and between each semester, you only get like 2 weeks semester break. So it was very jam packed, I would say.
And I think you're the first person on Lepas Sekolah to have done a diploma in business studies. And you mentioned that the duration is 2 years, which obviously would be longer than if you were to take A levels, which on average is 18 months. So why a diploma pathway over all others?
So, quite frankly, I actually couldn't afford private universities. So, A levels, IB, or even just doing like Canadian or Australian matriculation, that was just out of the equation because, Sunway and Taylor's were just too expensive for me. I was really quite lucky that I even got into UPU But even luckier that I have the option to choose a more convenient and shorter option, which is KPM. So compared to UP, which is 4 years, I could have done, I did KPM for 2 years, diploma instead.
What factors drew you to business studies as a subject?
I guess it's easy. I'm not the most studious person, so business seemed like an easy option and an easy way out, and it encompasses everything that's like macro. So you had your accounting, you had your econs, you had your supply chain, and also some management strat, which I feel like is quite versatile. So it was just something that I knew I could cope with, and something that I knew I could excel at. So
And retrospectively, would you still say that it's easy?
I can attest to this, like, the universal joke about business students not studying. So, yeah.
And did you do anything outside of academics while you were in pre-U?
No, not really. So, if high school was just me enjoying my youth and also not taking my studies seriously, then college was me just locking in because I realized that that was just my one opportunity, my one way out to secure a sponsorship. Because after this, I wouldn't have any opportunity to apply for scholarships or anything like that. So, I really made sure to maintain my CGPA all throughout.
And just to end all of this on a high note, what would you say was your best memory that you have from your pre-university days?
Sounds cliche, but it was definitely my classmates because I was pretty lucky to be surrounded by like minded friends who were also aiming for that sponsorship program. So we all shared the same work ethics. We all knew when to pull through during group work, and we all knew that we had to maintain our grades. And that meant that we would always do our assignments together. There was no gatekeeping of resources or anything like that. So it was a very healthy environment to study in.
Now let's talk about Mara. You were thrown into quite a whirlwind when you heard rumors that Mara was scrapping their IESP. Tell me about that story and then tell me what happened after.
Yeah, so I think we heard rumors around like my fifth semester. So that was like I was about to like finish off my diploma already that they were gonna scrap the program, and quite honestly, I crashed out because like, what do you mean? I studied 2 whole years to maintain my CGPA, and you're just gonna scrap this program? So I had my entire crash out moment, and because I was surrounded by a circle of friends who were aiming towards that same program, we all huddled together and sort of like shared resources lah. And I was just so desperate to get out of the country at that point, and we just looked at second options, which were sort of independent company sponsored like scholarships and all. So I remember applying to Gamuda, like Shell at the time, and even then the issue was that our qualification was a diploma, and a lot of these companies, if they want to sponsor your pre-U, they want A levels or IB at the very least, so that we could even get our foot in the door. And even actually, I don't even think we heard back from Gamuda or any of those companies actually. So around the same time, I was keeping tabs on a lot of scholars. I was stalking people's Instagram, or like people's LinkedIn, other students, and so just studying their route and their pathway, and if they had a way out, financially, if they had be sponsored under a different program, more niche programs or less competitive programs that I've never heard of. And I came across this sort of online student-led event or forum called Terbang Bersama, and they gathered a lot of the scholars from different companies. So there was Petronas scholars, there were Mara scholars as well from College Marbanting, and those were like really, really cream of the crop now, all the really, really smart students. And I only had bare minimum qualification, which is a diploma. But at the same time, Mara's WTU, World Top University application also just opened. And because we were so desperate, we just applied. And yeah, the rest is just history.
That really is quite the journey just to get a sponsorship to study overseas. And I'm glad eventually you ended up with a sponsorship. But could you first tell me what the application process was like for the Mara's World Top University sponsor?
So the thing about the Mara's World Top University application is that you have to hold an offer from their predetermined list of universities. Surprise, surprise, Lancaster was not on that list, but we'll get back to that. At the time, I already secured offers from University of Sydney, UNSW, and also University of Leeds. So I could already put my foot to the door because that was your first eligibility require you need to hold an offer from there, and then obviously you have to pass the IELTS and have like maintain a certain grade when you graduate your diploma and all. So you just apply online. I legit uploaded 3 offer letters because I just wanted them to know that I was just that desperate to get, to just study abroad, like globally. You just submit your documents online and you literally just play the waiting game. And then you had the interview that followed, of course. And then it was just even more waiting. And I know at the time we actually had a Telegram group going of all the applicants that, went for the interview, or just those who were actually trying to like know how the application process was like. And we just sort of kept each other updated on the progress. So like my application, like changed its status and like this and that. So we just updated each other on that, and it sort of helped alleviate each other's anxieties. Like, oh, when are we gonna hear back? Or like, when are we gonna hear an update on our application?
That must be really nice having a support group because, like you mentioned, it can be a very anxious process waiting to hear back. And I'm sure the most anxious part of an application is the interview stage. So, do you have any advice for students who might be sitting in that interview room in the future?
I would say be yourself, but also be prepared for like the basic interview questions. My experience with the interview was quite straightforward. There was no individual stage, it was a group interview actually. I remember they put us in groups of 8, called us into the meeting room, and we were all just lined up, sat in chairs. And they had like the basic questions like, or what made you apply in BM. By the way, the interview was in Malay, so make sure to speak Malay for the Mara interview. They asked the basic questions like, what are your motivations for applying this scholarship? What could us as an organization benefit from sponsoring you as a student? Or like, why do you want to study that degree that you put the application for? But I remember that during my interview they actually asked us to recite the Rukun Negara, so that's a very interesting aspect to the interview. Yeah, quite unlike any other experience that I've heard before.
Did you manage to recite it
Yes, I
successfully?
did.
That's good to hear. What did receiving the Mara sponsorship mean to you in terms of both responsibility and opportunity?
Not to be dramatic, but honestly, it was a lifeline for me because having graduated high school with such mediocre grades, like 6 A's, 1 E, by the way, and still being able to secure UPU offers. And even though I didn't end up choosing UPU, I went for KPM instead. Even having options for other institutions at such a cheap cost as well is really such an insane privilege. And it's something that I never taken for granted all throughout my 3 years studying abroad in the UK. Every opportunity that has come by in the UK, I've really just like jumped at it, whether it's extracurricular roles or like part-time jobs or internships or experience. I don't take it for granted because it's not an opportunity that comes by often, and it's something that you like quite literally have to be born into to receive this Bumiputra privilege. Yeah.
So, when you received the sponsorship, your batch was actually leaving in 2 months' time. Did you feel like the timeline between receiving the sponsorship and having to just pack up and go was super short? How did you mentally prepare to leave your home?
Oh my god, yes, the whole journey itself was so hectic. The week leading up to my departure, I was crying every single day. I cried when I looked at my cat. I cried when I was like wrapping bubble wraps on like the Malaysian food in my luggage. But it was just knowing that this was the fruition of like the 2 years, I maintained my grades for, as someone who does not care about academics, it was quite fulfilling lah.
Now, let's pivot to your time in the UK. Lancaster University is where you ended up studying,
Yeah.
but you also previously mentioned that it wasn't on the Mara list. So, how did this come to be?
So when I went for the WT interview, I put through my offer for Leeds and University of Sydney. But then throughout the application process, I actually called and spam called the Mara hotline a lot of times. And at some point, one of the admins actually picked up, and I quickly told them to, could you sort of amend my application to change from Leeds to Lancaster University, because they had actually fast tracked me and swapped me to the ISP program instead of WTA program after attending the interview. So I managed to join the last batch of IESP students that were gonna fly that like September, I believe. And so that's how I managed to sort of like quickly swap from Leeds to Lancaster. And why Lancaster? I guess I don't know. It's quite kampung now when I think of it. Lancaster is a very small town, but I've grown to really enjoy living in Lancaster. Yeah.
And you continue to pursue your degree in business studies.
Yes, business management.
Do you feel like your diploma prepared you adequately for your undergraduate degree?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because during my batch in KPM, actually, there were four of us, including myself, who ended up flying to the UK, and two of my friends actually, they managed to get entry into second year when they applied through UCAS, whereas myself and my other friend, who also graduated from Lancaster, actually only we got denied entry into second year and we had to restart from first year. So it was very lucky because first of all, your first year doesn't count in the UK, and second of all, I was really learning the same thing I learned in diploma for the 2 years. So first year of university was easy and breezy for me.
Were there any noteworthy parts of your degree that you'd like to mention?
Um, I think in second year and third year was when I got to sort of specialize and choose my modules. I've always had a strong affinity for accounting, so I took a lot of modules that were more geared towards accounting. So I don't think Lancaster doesn't really have like a major minor kind of like system, so you just took whatever modules you wanted. I also took some marketing modules, which was where I got to utilize a lot of my video editing skills, and also like where I put my Canva Pro skills to good use. So yeah, those were really fun.
And when you first moved overseas, were there any challenges that you had to overcome? Homesickness, cultural shocks?
Homesickness, definitely. Culture shock, not really, because I feel like I grew up watching a lot of YouTube and like YouTubers, your Zoella and the likes of that. So I was sort of already kind of knew what to expect. And in fact, I was very excited to be living in the UK in a whole different environment. So I think your upbringing and your mentality to how you assimilate and adjust when you go abroad is also very important. So I kept a very open mind when I first came to the UK.
So, Nuri, I know that you were part of some student societies while you were studying here. Do you want to tell us about that?
So right before I flew to the UK, I came across a student organization called UKEC. I was quite intrigued by what the entire role would entail, but I applied nonetheless, and it was a very fulfilling year for me. It was one whole year that it took up in my university. I had lots of meetings, to say the least. So I had lots of meetings I had to attend, but alongside that, we organized lots of student-led events. It was centered around the five pillars that UKC is laid upon, and it was just so enriching to be part of something that's really impactful because I got to really penetrate that circle of Malaysian students who were really passionate about nation building. And on top of that, we also had exposure to a lot of the opportunities that you don't usually get as a student, which is direct engagement with companies and also managing big events. I would say if you were a student and you are planning to get yourself involved in these kind of like student organizations, you really have to have the agility and discipline for it, because you need to remember that you're doing this alongside your full-time studies. And as much as you can brag about all the events that you help run on your CV and all, you're also dealing with real big stakeholders and stakes as well, and high stakes, sorry. So yeah.
You also worked part time during your undergraduate degree. Do you want to talk to us about that?
So I think in my first year, I really wanted to make the most out of my 20 hours term time because I wanted to milk so much of that money. So in my first year, I didn't really have that much luck with part-time jobs. I applied through the university's own like recruitment service, because Lancaster is like a centralized campus university. They actually promote a lot of jobs within the university itself. So you have like admin jobs, so you have like hospitality jobs. Only in second year did I actually receive offers for it, and that was partly due to my internship that I got in my first year through UKEC itself, to the Malaysian Career Fair. And that was sort of like a domino effect. I got one part time job, and then you maintain that connection, you maintain that relationship with your manager, and then they refer you to another department, this and that. And I really got to max out my hours. And I think it was earlier in my second year where I realized that, okay, maybe I do want to stay in the UK. And that was when I decided I was going to save up for the graduate visa later on when I graduated.
So, Nuri, evidently you're still here after graduation. Congratulations on graduation, by the way.
Thank
And it's
you.
safe to say that you're on the graduate visa. What would you have to say to students who are on the fence after graduating overseas? What are some key factors to look at when making that decision whether they want to stay here or go back home to Malaysia?
I think at the very core of it, you really have to ask yourself, what is your motivation to stay in the UK? Do you actually appreciate the work culture here? Do you see yourself settling here in a while, or are you just here to use it as like a launch pad, to equip yourself several years of experience in your early career, and then sort of going back to Malaysia to like utilize and leverage on those skills. But realistically, also you have to look at the financial aspect of it, because the initial investment is very expensive. You have your graduate visa, which is a hefty price to pay. Secondly, you also have to save up enough to cover your rent first, and also of course a few months of savings for your actual like cost of living and groceries. So just that three main thing you have to save up first, and just sort of ask yourself, do you have the funds for that? And if you do, can you maintain that for the coming months as you are job hunting?
And is it safe to assume that you saved up for all of those expenses through your part time job?
Yes, to the part-time jobs.
That's
It is honestly a blessing that I took a degree that's quite easy, which is business. So I managed to sort of manage my time quite wisely lah.
that's
So
amazing to hear. So, what are you up to now?
I am actually working in between jobs. So not the most ideal situation to be in, but it's also because I didn't really apply to that many grad schemes this time last year as a final year student, because it's usually around October, November, December when the cycles, the application cycles open and close, and I was really just like my head was just like to make money in my third year and to like really max out my hours, so I didn't really spend that much time with applications. And now I am just working in between jobs to sustain my cost of living, of course, but also applying online for grad jobs. Yeah.
And lastly, can you summarize your education journey Lepas Sekolah in 3 words?
In 3 words, I would describe it as fortunate, enriching, and eye opening. Yeah. I'm Nuri, and this was my education journey, Lepas Sekolah.